今天我们荣幸地邀请到了来自全球的知名学者，分析大模型技术的机制与挑战，梳理在生物医学等关键领域的核心应用，探讨人工智能对人与社会的深刻影响。我们上午的会议从现在正式开始，从以下会议我们将用英文开始进行。The increasing power of AI system brings both opportunities and risks. How can we use technical means to ensure the explainability and controllability of all AI systems? In our next session, we will have Max Tegmark's keynote speech on how to control AI systems. The session will be moderated by Professor Tailin Wu of Westlake University. He is also the PI from AI for Scientific Simulation and Discovery Lab. Professor Wu and also Professor Max Tegmark will both join us virtually. Okay, Tailin, now is your table.
Let's welcome Max Tegmark. Max Tegmark is a professor doing AI and physics research at MIT as part of the Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Fundamental Interactions and the Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. He advocates for qualitative use of technology as president of the Future of Life Institute. He is the author of over 250 publications, as well as the New York Times bestsellers, Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, and Our Mathematical Universe, My Quest for the Ultimate Nature of Reality. His most recent AI research focuses on intelligible intelligence, as well as the news bias detection with machine learning. Let's welcome Max.
Thank you so much. 谢谢你。你可以听我吗？
Yes.
非常好。So it's such a pleasure to see you all here. I'm very honored to be here. I'm going to share my screen now. So as you heard, I'm going to be talking about how to keep AI under control. I first want to say that when Tailin introduced me, he forgot to mention what I'm most proud of all, of course, which is that I have been the PhD supervisor of Tailin, Wu Tailin, and also of Liu Ziming, who you'll be seeing later today. And in fact, many of my best students over the years are Zhongguoren. So it's such a pleasure to get to speak with you all in Beijing. 早上好，我会说一点普通话，可是我说的不好。So I'm going to switch back to speaking English for the rest of this presentation. But I want to tell you all that if the type of research that I'll be describing here about how to keep AI under control and how to understand it, if this is something that you're interested in, and if you are interested in coming to work here at MIT as a postdoc or as a graduate student, please send me an email. Maybe we can work together. All right, so how do we keep AI under control? And first of all, why should we keep AI under control? Obviously, artificial intelligence is very, very exciting. That's why we're all here this morning, because it offers so many great opportunities. We wrote a paper recently about how artificial intelligence can actually help us with all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that China, America, and almost all other countries on Earth have agreed should be pursued. If we do the right thing, it can help us accomplish many of these goals faster, and I believe even go far beyond the original goals, helping cure ultimately all diseases we have and helping everybody on the planet live healthier, wealthier, and inspiring lives. as long as we keep control over this technology. And as you know, there's been a lot of recent concern about losing control over artificial intelligence. Here, for example, we have Professor Jeff Hinton, one of the true pioneers of deep learning.
Are we close to the computers coming up with their own ideas for improving themselves?
Yes, we might be.
And then it could just go fast.
That's an issue, right? We have to think hard about how to control that.
Yeah, can we?
We don't know. We haven't been there yet, but we can try.
Okay, that seems kind of concerning.
Yes.
So he's gotten worried. And here we have Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI that built ChatGPT and GPT-4.
And the bad case, and I think this is like important to say, is like lights out for all of us.
Lights out for all of us. So basically, he's worried that we're all going to die, that humanity is going to get wiped out. And this is the leader of the company that's number one, perhaps, at building these things right now. And moreover, in May of this year, there was this statement that came out from signed by leaders in AI saying that artificial intelligence poses a risk of extinction, that it could really cause the end of the human race. And so it's saying that the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other risks like pandemics and nuclear war. And the most interesting thing about this is who signed it. Not only Sam Altman from OpenAI, but also Demis Hassabis, the CEO of Google DeepMind and so on. And also Jeff Hinton and Joshua Bengio and Stuart Russell and many, many leading Chinese AI researchers. You see here on the list, for example, the dean of the Tsinghua AI Research Lab signed this. Yi Zheng signed it. So we have to ask ourselves, why are they so worried about this all of a sudden? Why now with such sudden concern about this when we've been doing AI for so long? This is interesting because the idea that there is a risk of building machines smarter than us is not new at all. It's a very old idea. In 1951, just 2 years after the Chinese Revolution, Alan Turing, the godfather of artificial intelligence, said that when we get machines that are smarter than us, we should expect that they will take control. And this is an idea that many other leading AI researchers have talked about since then. So if the idea is so old that building smarter entities than ours might take control, just like building a new species can take control over the previously smarter species if it's smarter. If the idea is so old, why are people talking about it only now? All of a sudden, why is it in the news all of a sudden now? It's not because the idea is new. The idea is old and obvious, but it's because the progress in artificial intelligence is so quick that it suddenly seems like this transition when AI becomes smarter than us is not in the distant future anymore, but that it might be very soon. For example, when I was in Beijing and just 3 years ago, I showed this slide in a presentation that I made illustrating the progress of the field. So this is an abstract landscape where the elevation, the height, represents how difficult it is for AI to do a certain task. And the sea level is what humans can do today. So look how much things have changed in 3 years. This is completely obsolete and out of date, this picture. There's many things, as AI gets better, the sea level rises. Of course, things like the Vinograd test or a lot of basic programming, AI can do really, really well now. AI can do a lot of art quite well, etc. So things are happening very fast. And the definition of artificial general intelligence, AGI, is, of course, that AI can do all of these tasks as well as humans can do them. How long will that take? Well, that's a very interesting question, because by the time that machines become able to do all our jobs as well as we can, then they can also do the job of AI research and AI development, which means that future progress after that will probably go much faster, because the machines can figure out the improvements rather than wait for us to understand it. And we might get into a recursively self-improving process leading rapidly to superintelligence, which is vastly smarter than us. So how soon will we get to AGI? A few years ago, we still had people like my MIT colleague Rodney Brooks, who said it won't happen for hundreds of years. Most AI researchers in surveys said, oh, it probably won't happen for decades. Maybe it will happen in 30 years or 40 years. But now we have Microsoft saying that it's already starting to happen, because Microsoft just put this paper out talking about sparks of artificial general intelligence already in GPT-4. And here we have Yoshua Bengio, also, of course, one of the most famous AI researchers on the planet, who shared the Turing Award, basically the Nobel Prize for AI, with Geoffrey Hinton. And this is what he has to say.
We have basically now reached the point where there are AI systems that can fool humans, meaning they can pass the Turing tests.
So back in 1951, 2 years after the Chinese Revolution, when Alan Turing talked about machines becoming smarter than people and eventually taking control, he invented the Turing test, right? And that was a big milestone for him as to when machines were getting really competitive with humans. And Joshua Bengio thinks that GPT-4 already passes it. Now, this might sound like mostly bad news, but I'm quite optimistic that if we can figure out how to control the artificial intelligence, it can lead to a really great future. That's why I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the technical research that we do here at MIT to help figure out how to control AI. Another optimistic thing I want to say is that I think that now that people are finally taking seriously that AI could wipe out humanity and cause human extinction, I think this is actually the best thing that's happened for US-China relations in a very, very long time. Because up until now, when policymakers, for example, in the West, started to understand that AI could make the West very powerful, but they did not understand that it could end the human race, they all had an incentive to just race and try to become as powerful as possible and not pay attention to control and safety. But now the realization is beginning to sink in that if we're not careful with this, we all lose. Everybody gets wiped out. That is actually something which suddenly makes the incentives of the West and China aligned exactly in the same direction. It doesn't matter if you're Chinese or American, if you're extinct, of course. And I'm actually hopeful that we can start seeing a new age of a new era of geopolitical collaboration, so that we can all get better off with artificial intelligence and having more collaboration, less confrontation. In other words, I'm hopeful that we can start getting more collaboration on sensible policies and ways to regulate AI and prevent anyone from doing dangerous things with them. That's item number 2 here, of keeping it under control. But most of what I'm going to talk about today is not that. It's going to be the first one. How do we actually keep control over at the technical level. How can one person control an AI system that they've built, even if it's very, very smart? So here I am you will hear that I am more optimistic actually than many other researchers, because most of my colleagues have come to just accept that they've sort of given up on understanding really powerful AI systems. And they've given up to the idea that we will just build these ever more powerful black box systems. We have no idea how they work, but somehow we still have to figure out how to control them. And what I'm going to tell you is I think there is a lot of hope for actually understanding them and controlling them through understanding. This is a small field of people trying to understand AI, how AI actually works. The name of the field is mechanistic interpretability. And to give you an idea how small it is, this is the largest conference ever on the subject that I organized here at MIT. Look how few people there are. There are much fewer people here, I think, than are right there at your conference now, for example. And this subject is a lot like neuroscience, in that in traditional neuroscience, you take something which does intelligent things like a brain, and then you study it and try to figure out how it works. But there are probably tens of thousands of people working on that, right? So this is a much smaller field. I think of it as artificial neuroscience. You have an AI, it does smart things, and then you try to understand how it works. But I'm optimistic that this field is making very rapid progress. I hope at the end of my presentation, you'll be more optimistic too. So mechanistic interpretability, you have some data set, you train AI system, or usually a large neural network like a transformer, to figure out things about the data set and get very intelligent, very good at doing some tasks. But it's a black box in the sense that you have no idea how it works. How can it help to get more understanding about how it works? It can help in 3 ways. The lowest level of ambition is to simply diagnose the trustworthiness, understand it well enough to know whether you should trust it or not, and how much you should trust it, but you don't change it in any way. I'm more ambitious than that. I would like to also understand it better so we can make them more trustworthy by actually changing them inside. And I'm actually still more ambitious than that. I would like us to actually be able to change them so much that we can guarantee that they can be trusted, so that we can take all the knowledge that the machine learning has learned and extract it out of the black box and re-implement it in some other system which is easier to understand, and where we can even do so-called formal verification and prove that it will do the things that we want to do. So just to take a step back here, so this doesn't sound crazy and unrealistic. The idea that you can prove things about computer programs is very old. Just like it's related to proving things in mathematics. And there's this concept called proof carrying code, where the code you have also comes with a proof that can be automatically checked that the code will obey certain specifications. This is useful for cybersecurity, for example. But so far, work on formal proofs about code have largely been made by humans, which means it does not scale to large AI systems. My vision is that as the AI gets better, we use the AI systems themselves to prove things about other AI systems. Another thing which is very important to remember is it's much more difficult to find a proof in mathematics or in this context than it is to check that the proof is correct. So once the AI finds a very complicated proof that your system can be controlled and will do what you want, you can write your own program in Python that's only a few hundred lines long that can just check that the whole proof is correct. And now you're in this wonderful position that you actually trust this complicated system, even though maybe it's much smarter than we all are. Because no matter how smart it is, it can never do something which is provably impossible. So let's look a little bit at some concrete examples of this young field trying to understand more about how machine learning works. I'm going to mostly show examples from my own research group. In fact, some of them with Liu Ziming, but also a few things that came up recently at this conference we had here. And the first one is from this paper with Eric Michaud, Ziming Liu, and others, where we discovered that even though a large language model can do many, many things, there's good evidence that actually we don't have to understand all at once, because it consists of many, many different modules that we call quanta that do different tasks. We developed an algorithm to discover these computational quanta. And for those of you who do machine learning, we looked at the gradients of certain tokens, and then we did a spectral clustering algorithm that finds them automatically. Many of these have the property that during the training, first the system doesn't know it, and then suddenly it knows how to do this task. Some of these tasks are relatively simple, like a particular fact, the name of a certain person or something like that. Others are very algorithmic tasks. For example, if you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples in my left column, these were all learned at the same time, and it's the same circuits in the neural network that's doing them. And what are they doing? Well, clearly they've learned how to deal with numbered lists. So if the list goes up to 6, it predicts the number 7 is going to come next. If it's alphabetical, ending with E, it predicts an F. The next quantum on the right is a very different kind of thing. What is learned there is to keep all the line, that some people like to keep all the lines of their text roughly the same length. So when the line is getting up to about that magic length, it puts a line break into the files. And we found all sorts of quanta like this doing all sorts of things. And the good news here is that this opens up the possibility that we can try to understand complicated systems by understanding many different pieces of them separately, a lot like in physics, where you don't have to understand the most complicated systems first. You can start by understanding atoms and molecules and kind of go from there. Another interesting thing about this quantization hypothesis is that we could actually use it to predict the famous scaling laws. So it's well known that when you train a large language model in China, the performance improves as a power law, which looks like a straight line in the log-log plot, when you increase the size of the data set, or when you increase the number of parameters, or when you increase the amount of compute you put into it, with actually more than one different slope here. And we were able to derive all 3 of these power laws from just one, from this quantum hypothesis, and just an assumption that the frequency with which different quanta are useful is also a power law. Another area where there's been a lot of progress recently in understanding neural networks is how they represent knowledge. You know, if you as a human are studying something for a long time, sometimes you're like, oh, yes, I see it now. And you see a new way of representing the knowledge. You get a picture in your head, you feel you get it, and now you can generalize to other examples. You've understood something. There are been a lot of papers recently showing how large language models store certain kinds of knowledge. For example, this paper that I'm showing you here shows they found how a large language model remembered that the Eiffel Tower was in Paris, and they were able to edit that knowledge so that afterwards, when they asked it questions, it told them that actually the Eiffel Tower is in Italy, in Rome. Here's another example. This is work together with Liu Ziming, who's with us today, where we look at how it represents the knowledge of a generalized multiplication table. So imagine that you have something a little bit like your multiplication table, but it can be some arbitrary group operation. In our case, we did, for example, addition modulo 52. And you give it some examples, and then you want to see if it can see a pattern and generalize to other examples also. And what we discovered is that when we trained the neural network to do this task, the internal way in which it represented all these inputs, which were actually just abstract symbols, all of a sudden underwent a kind of phase transition. At the same instant, when the test loss suddenly went up, in other words, when the model became able to generalize to new examples that it had not seen, at that exact instance, all these internal representations lined up in a circle. So it's represented some kind of knowledge about the structure of the data set. In this case, it's easy for us humans to understand this, because if you're doing addition modulo 12, that's just like the time on a clock, right? 10 o'clock plus 3 hours is 1 o'clock, wraps around, and we represent that in the clock as a circle. And the computer had that idea that it should just embed everything in a circle and then implement a little algorithm for adding up the angles. And by doing that, the representation itself embodied the structure that helped it generalize. In this case, this operation of adding up numbers modulo 59 is commutative. A plus B is B plus A. That is automatically true if you do this for angle addition. And also it's associative. A plus B and then add C is the same as doing them in a different order. So by coming up with a clever representation that embodies structure in the data, it's able to do things suddenly much easier. I'm confident that this is something that we're going to see happens again and again and again in large language models, where it represents various structures of the Chinese language and so on, also with clever geometric representations that we haven't discovered yet, but hopefully some of you will when you study it. And the beautiful thing is we can look inside. After a lot of compute can go into training these models, but once they've discovered these patterns, we can see them, we can extract them, and then we can code them up in other ways. There are interesting analogies also to physics here, because depending on the training parameters we used, sometimes it would figure out the representation. Here we were just doing regular addition, so it figured out to put all the symbols on a straight line in the right order. But with other parameters, it just overfits and has a stupid representation. Other cases, it takes a very, very long time until it figures out the representation. That's called grokking. And yet other cases, it just confused and never learns anything. It doesn't even memorize anything. Another way, and another thing I think gives me hope towards understanding large systems, is if we can understand them in pieces, not just small quanta, but maybe bigger pieces of modules of sorts. If you look at the human brain that you all have on your head, it is very modular in the sense that the part in the back specializes in vision, this part specializes in hearing, and so on. Whereas when we train a normal neural network, it's usually not like that at all. Why? Well, Ziming and I spent a lot of time talking about this, and he had this nice idea that, maybe it's because in the human brain, it actually is expensive to put neurons far apart, because then you need to have it takes more volume for the long axon cell that that's connecting them. It takes up space, it takes up energy, and it causes a time delay for the signal to propagate. So our human brain has an incentive to keep the connections short. But when we train neural networks, we don't care about that. You can permute the neurons in any layer, and it doesn't change the loss function. It doesn't change a regularization like L1 or L2 either. So what we did was we came up with a scheme we called BIMT, biologically inspired modular training, where we just embed all the neurons in an actual space, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, whatever. And then instead of having, for those of you who do machine learning, instead of punishing weights by just the absolute value of the weight, the so-called L1 norm, we multiply that punishment by how long the connection is. So it has an incentive to have short connections. And that makes a huge difference, we found. Here you see this example we talked about earlier with learning modular addition. And I'll play it one more time. When we start penalizing long connections, it figures out it can do the whole problem with much fewer long connections. And actually, you see a modular structure appears where it's kind of doing 3 different things completely in parallel. And then it seems like in the end, it's doing some sort of generalization of majority voting to get more accuracy at the end. These individual modules that you see here perhaps are candidates for the kind of quanta we talked about. So this is another method for actually discovering them. And one can study how the individual ones work. We have another paper called The Pizza and the Clock, where we talk about that, also with Ziming. And we also tried this for many other examples, where again, when you just encourage the network to become modular and simple, all these interesting structures appear. This was a more difficult example with group theory and the permutation group of S4, etc., where it turns out that different neurons actually correspond to well-known facts from group representation theory. Like there's one neuron that tells you whether the permutation is even or odd, for those of you who are into mathematics and group theory. If you train a neural network to learn mathematical formulas, to approximate them well, you can see also that this encouraging them to become modular and simple reveals all the nice mathematical structure that should be there according to us humans. Like when 2 things are separate, and neural networks really separate when there are modules that can be shared. Like you should calculate the squares of the numbers first and then combine them. It figures out how to do that. We did it for a more complicated example with MNIST digit recognition here. We can talk more about this in the discussion. Another thing that Ziming and I did was we looked at simplifying neural networks so that they would bring out better any symmetries inherent in the problem. We used this for a famous physics problem to do with black holes. It was discovered in 1915 that the geometry of space and time around the black hole is described by this 4x4 matrix of functions on the upper left, known as a Schwarzschild metric. And for many years, people thought that you would die when you reached this Schwarzschild radius where r equals 2m, because you can see in the formula there that then it looks like you're dividing by 0. But 17 years later, these other scientists, Goulston and Panleve, found that actually there's a better coordinate system where there's more symmetry, when you can see that nothing special happens at that place in space. Well, Ziming and I, our AI system that auto-simplifies, it discovered that itself, not in 17 years, but in 1 hour. I want to wrap up here, so I think I'll skip over a few things. I just want to mention that there has been progress also understanding better how AlphaGo works in its chess playing abilities. And it's turned out that even though you in China were taught that you're not as good as computers anymore at playing Go, it turns out that's not true. Because actually, this paper here led by Tony Wang discovered an adversarial attack. There's a strategy that you can actually learn as a human and beat the world's best Go engines, where you surround, while it's surrounding you, you start surrounding it and it won't notice. By studying the game of Othello, which is much, much simpler than Go. It's kind of like a baby Go. It's played in Europe. It turned out that by just training on games presented to it in this boring algebraic notation showed in the lower left corner, so you tell it E6, E5, D5, blah, 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 and it just finishes a sequence. in order to get good at this, it actually figured out that the transformer, that there's seems to be like an 8x8 board. And Neil Nanda and Kenneth Lee and others, they figured out that there's actually a representation, even a linear representation inside of the neural network, where it like stores a little Go board, basically. So this is, again, super useful. You can see what models of the world that the AI has actually built, and then you can extract it out. We're kind of at the out of time here. So rather than give more detailed examples, I'm just going to mention we've worked a lot on whenever you have a neural network that is good at fitting some kind of function, we've come up with some quite powerful tools for replacing the whole neural network by an actual formula that's as accurate as the whole neural network. So you can have a neural network with thousands or millions of parameters. Sometimes you can find a formula which does just as well, which is much easier to understand, easier to trust, generalizes better. And we managed to get actually state-of-the-art performance on this task. And just to end, I want to say that if people tell you it's hopeless to understand AI, don't believe them. Of course, it's hopeless if you convince yourself that it's impossible, because then you're not going to try. But I've shown you how much progress has been made, just a little fraction of all the progress has been made, and actually in just 6 months, which is a very, very short time. More progress has happened in this field of artificial neuroscience, I would say, than in all of the regular neuroscience combined. And this, why, even though there are 100 times fewer people, why is it much easier to figure out how a black box neural network works than a human brain? Well, I'll tell you why. If you want to figure out how the brain works, first of all, you have to get all sorts of permissions from ethics boards and so on to measure from the brain, of course. But then it's super difficult to actually get the data out of the brain. You can, with some high-tech stuff, maybe measure 1,000 neurons at a time with noise, but you have 10 to the power 11 neurons you would like to measure, right? 100,000 million. And you would also like to know the 100 terabytes worth of synaptic weights, which we've hardly managed to read out at all. Whereas when you're studying in artificial neural networks, you're in this wonderful situation. You can just measure all the data all the time, do all the experiments you want, and it's just a really exciting field. If anyone is interested in collaborating on this, please contact me or Ziming. We would love to know. And my vision for how that can help us keep AI under control is very radical. We get politicians to adopt rules that the only AIs that you are allowed to put in charge of very high stakes decisions that can affect human lives are ones where you have an actual formal proof that they're not going to do dangerous things, that they're going to do things that we want. And don't freak out and think it's going to be so hard to figure out how the neural networks work and prove things about them, because we don't have to do it all ourselves. We can make AI tools that do a lot of this for us. So that's where I want to end, with a bit of optimism. I think it's incredibly important to keep AI under control and not build stuff way smarter than us humans and unleash it. That if we don't control it, I think that would end terribly. I think we would probably go extinct. But I think we can do better. I think we can, with good technical work, figure out how to actually keep them in control. We just need policymakers to help us out and regulate so that people don't do crazy things in the meantime until we've figured out how to control it all. Thank you. 谢谢你们.
Thank you, Max. Yeah, thanks very much for Max. Great talk. So I also share Max's opinion that we need to control AI and align AI. And if we can control it and align it, I think it can do very much good things to humanity, including helping us do science and many other things like colonizing other planets and so on. So next, let's welcome Dr. Jason Si onto the floor. And he will will chat with Max about some important questions about AI and its control. So Dr. Jason Si is Vice President of Tencent and Dean of Tencent Research Institute.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, Max. 应该对这里挥手的。
你好。
This is Jason from Tencent. Long time no see.
Yeah, great to see you again.
I was truly inspired by your lecture just now. It reminded me of the seminar held by you guys, the Future Life Institute, in Puerto Rico in 2019. I remember the theme at the time was beneficial AGI, and the average expectation of the arriving of AGI was 2045. Right? You discussed the myths about it. Yeah. Such as super intelligence turning evil or somehow obtain consciousness. So you proposed that alignment could significantly reduce the risk of AGI. So at that time, as most of us still thought AGI was something far away. So the discussion of preventing it turning evil sounds a lot more like a science fiction fantasy. So other topics such as privacy, data protection, and the transparent algorithm, I think at that time is gained more attention. So the discussion therefore was often less focused. But 4 years later now, so with the emerging of powerful foundation model, our version of AGI is somewhat clear, but still we disagree on how to deal with AGI development. So nevertheless, this is the much defined disagreement, and we could discuss specifics about AI development principles. So how would you organize the next international conference on AI? So what topic would you would be on your top of your list if you had this conference today? Thanks.
So great to see you again. I remember our conversations in Puerto Rico very fondly.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to do to guarantee a good future with AI is very obvious. It's just to treat the AI industry more like the biotech industry. In biotech, no company would be allowed to just start selling a new medicine in Beijing or New York without first getting approval for the medicine from government-appointed experts, right? In America, we have the Food and Drug Administration. You have a similar agency in China where the company has to actually do clinical trials, and they have to demonstrate that this is a safe medicine and that its benefits outweigh the harms, right? Whereas in artificial intelligence, it's very much the Wild West. China actually has done the best so far in terms of putting in place some regulations on companies. I think Europe is number 2 in that they're partly through now adopting the new EU AI Act. America is last. We have still no meaningful regulation at all for AI, and I think that's crazy. I think it's so clear that biotech is better off because it's regulated. I don't think there is any companies in China or in America that would want to get rid of clinical trials and just let any irresponsible small company, sell garbage that's dangerous. So that's the first thing I would think. At an international conference on AI governance, it would be really helpful if participants from around the world would share their best practices for how to regulate cars, airplanes, biotech, and then take the same approach to artificial intelligence. I think this is a very quick win that can be had. And this will also buy more time for answering some of those more difficult questions that you asked, because by definition, nobody is allowed to release products that are truly dangerous. They have to wait until they've actually figured out that they're safe.
Jeffrey Hinton tossed the idea of model computer a few months back. So the system matched AI with hardware as simple as a toaster at a low cost and running off a few watts of power. So it resembles human intelligence in a certain way. So that is why he called it a model. So I remember the book you sent it to me as a gift, Left 3.0. You have also imaged the matching of humanity with AI, so which can overcome many difficulties to biological life. So machines become mortal, while human could be immortal. So with the emerging of large language model, it seems human civilization has never been so close to AGI. So do you have some new ideas about the form of future human beings? So if you get the chance to like to rewrite your book Left 3.0 again, which part of the book would you like to change?
I think the future is still very open. You know, when we make more powerful technologies, generally, if we are able to control the technology, like you control your phone, then it helps you. It enables you to do more things that you couldn't do before. Whereas if you lose control over things, it's generally going to make your life worse. And if we actually manage to build super intelligence, we should not think of it as just a new technology like the steam engine or electricity. It's better to think about it as a new species, a new life form on Earth that can make copies of itself and have its own goals. And there we have to be very, very careful. Right? You do not have problems in China with the cows making trouble because you control the cows, right? Why do you control the cows? Because you're smarter than the cows. Whereas if we make a new species that is much smarter than us, it's much more difficult to control it and very easy to lose control. So I think if we do this well and we figure out how to make machines, to guarantee that machines will actually share our goals and do things that help us, we're going to have a wonderful future. Just like Tylin said, we can cure all the diseases, eliminate hunger, poverty, world peace, explore our universe. But we have to make sure we keep control. It's very easy to imagine, like Alan Turing did, that we lose the control. So to say it differently, instead of asking ourselves, what will the future be like with superintelligence? I think we should ask, what do we want the future to be like? And then figure out how to steer in that direction. And I think China has actually a unique role to play here because because you have such an old civilization that's been around for many thousands of years, you have more of a tradition of thinking long term. And I would encourage all of you to think about what would you like it to mean to be human in the age of artificial intelligence, and share those ideas, elaborate on them. And if we can get the global shared positive vision for such a future where everybody gets better off, that's going to make it much easier to actually collaborate with everybody and build that future.
Okay. So we all know you Future Left Institute published a public open letter to calling for the pause in AI development for at least 6 months. I don't remember what exactly the time is. Maybe it's already 6 months. So Elon Musk and some other prominent figures in AI field signed the letter. So this call for a long pause gained much attention and triggered some deep discussion about the future of humanity. we all know Jeffrey Hinton quit Google to sound the alarm of AGI just a few months after he talked enthusiastically model computer. So AGI could be the necessary step toward interstellar civilization Elon dreamed of, correct? Please correct me if I were wrong. But it seemed that Jeffrey Hinton took a U-turn on AI. So are you still positive about the future of AI development? And do you agree that AGI will be beneficial to humanity in general, or will Asiloma principles you guys made is enough to protect humanity from the threat of AGI?
I've always believed that AI will either become the best thing ever to happen to humanity or the worst thing ever to happen to humanity, and that the choice is ours. So what we do with this technology. In the last few, and I would say in the last year, I have gotten a bit more pessimistic because I had really hoped that when it became more obvious how close we are to AGI, I had really hoped that policymakers would be faster to actually start regulating this, like, as I said, they all have done long ago for biotech and airplanes and many other things. But so far, I mean, in the West, in America, almost nothing has happened, just a bunch of talk. China at least has started with some regulations, as I said, which I think is really good. But I would welcome a lot more. It's important to remember that it's almost guaranteed that we will get powerful AI, right? But it's not guaranteed that it's going to be good. We have to step up and make sure we get the regulation and the collaboration and the safety techniques to make it good, and then it will be good. Not automatically. We cannot be lazy, afford to be lazy here.
Okay. Next question. Just now you talk a lot about the alignment. So at present, I think one important way to address the challenges of AI is to align, so that to ensure the AI decisions are consistent with human values and moral concepts. Alignment is indeed one of the fundamental ideas stated in the in Asiloma principles. So the implementation of alignment requires tangible investment. As we all heard, OpenAI proposed that they will allocate 20% of the computer resources to support the value alignment project. So that's a lot. But do you think it's enough? What kind of investment do you think big companies, large language model companies needed for value alignment? And moreover, with many thousands of large language models trained in many different organizations, civilizations, how to get the universal alignment across all companies in different regions?
I think the best thing that OpenAI can do right now is to stop training GPT-5 or other models that are more powerful than what we have now, and commit to not releasing anything more powerful than GPT-4 until we have figured out how to make them safe. But the problem is the companies are under so much pressure from the other companies that no company can stop alone, because then they just lose the competition. So that's why it's so important that we get, I think, an international agreement on the safety standards, so everybody has to have the same standards, have a level playing field. That's the way we could actually get a pause. For the second question about what would we ever be able to agree on, even though people across the world and within countries have often different opinions about all sorts of things. I think the situation is much better than many people make it out to be. I started with the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are very big, ambitious goals. China and America, and Russia and India and everybody else agrees on them, right? There's so many things we agree on. Let's start by first doing all the things we agree on. And then we can worry about the rest, the details. And you should contrast that with machines. You know, we humans have so much in common everywhere in the world because we have to eat, we're afraid of dying, we love our children, and so on. If you are a large language model, you're an AI, that's a very alien kind of mind. And the space of possible alien AI minds is vastly larger than the space of human minds. So you could easily imagine an AI that doesn't care about any of the things that we humans care about and just wants to build ever bigger GPU server farms all over the planet, or turn the sun into a Dyson sphere, or rearrange the planet into something else, you know, whatever. What I'm saying is, to first approximations, all humans want the same thing, you know, compared to all sorts of crazy things machines could want. So let's first just figure out how to make machines aligned with those things that we all agree on all around the planet. That's a great start.
Okay. Very interesting. I think the challenges posed by AGI is not only how we develop the responsible AGI, but how we use it. I totally agree. To better prepare for the coexistence with smart machines, we urgently need a substantial update of today's discussion system to get everyone prepared, particularly for the younger generation. However, as the story I share, with the audience here, with my friends, the education turned out to be the first few sectors that are changed or challenged by AGI.
Yeah.
I recently talked with my friend, professor from Hong Kong University. He told me that the GPT was widely misused on campus. Students are now using ChatGPT to do their homework, do their essays. He asked me if it could be possible to develop some algorithms to detect those works completed by GPTs. He puzzled about the future of education. Would it be a contest between different intelligence tools, like one for homework and another for detecting the trace of AI-generated homeworks? So will the teaching and the learning between students and the teachers turn into an offense and the defense of who can use AI better? So as a professor, Max, I wonder, you do have some first-hand experience on this scenario. So how do you view the long-term impact of AI on human education and the learning patterns? Is this the necessary evil to prepare younger generations to fit in the oncoming era?
I agree with you that it has dramatic consequences for education, and I do not think that yes, there will be a race between AI to detect whether it's machine generated on one hand, and on the other hand, students using AI to do their homework. And the professors are going to lose this race, because by definition, these large language models are trained to behave more and more like humans, and they can. I think what we have to do instead is just really change significantly what we teach and how we test students. And more fundamentally, you know, if we have machines that can soon do all the jobs better than our students, then they will, of course, have to ask ourselves also what we want it to mean to be human in the first place. You don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we have to compete against machines who will do the same job, you know, for 1 renminbi a month, better than we do. We might decide that we just want to reserve some jobs that give people meaning for people, even if machines could do them cheaper. And so we should not just, in other words, have talk with engineers and AI researchers. We should talk to psychologists and teachers and social workers and others. We should all think about what makes us happy. What do we want? What kind of society do we want to build in the age of AI that brings out, so that the AI really brings out the best in us and makes life feel very meaningful for us? There's no reason why we should have to compete with machines.
Yeah.
We build ourselves.
Okay. Due to the time limit, I think I should stop here. So thank you, Max, for your wonderful speech and this fascinating discussion. And I think all these your inputs bring some hope to a better future of human and AGI work together. So thanks again for your sharing. I will leave the floor back again to Tailin. Thanks.
Thank you. 谢谢你.
Hope to meet your person in the future. So bye bye.
Yeah, thanks very much for this wonderful talk.